Thank you all for tuning into Big Mama Story Time. Story Time! Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment to my page. Here we go. Hi guys, thank you all for tuning into Big Mama Story Time. This is part 2 of the Hunchback of Notre Dame. Alright, I'm finna get into this so I can finish up this story for you all. That's funny, continued Esmeralda. I don't see any. Quasimodo peered closer. Any what? Monster lines. Esmeralda showed him his hand. Not a single one, Quasimodo, she said. Now you look at me. Do you think I'm evil? Oh no, answered Quasimodo. You're kind and good and a gypsy, said Esmeralda. So you see, maybe Frollo is wrong about both of us. Quasimodo looked down and watched the soldiers parade back and forth in front of the cathedral. You helped me. Now I would like to help you, he told her. But there is no way to escape, explained Esmeralda. Frollo has soldiers posted at every door. Quasimodo smiled slyly. We won't use a door. Esmeralda swallowed hard. You mean climb down? Just pick up? Sure, said Quasimodo. That's how I got to the festival. Just pick up your goat. It'll be easy. Quasimodo got to his feet. You carry him and I'll carry you. Ready? He asked. Well, said Esmeralda, I'm not sure. Quasimodo carefully picked her up. Don't be afraid. I'm not afraid, Esmeralda said firmly. Here we go. Quasimodo took a wide leap over the ledge and grabbed the parapet. Together, they dangled high over the city. Dally let out a loud bleat. Now I'm afraid, said Esmeralda. Quasimodo shifted his weight a bit. The trick is not to look down. You've done this before, asked Esmeralda as Quasimodo leaped across the cathedral's facade. Not exactly, Quasimodo admitted. Esmeralda gulped, closed her eyes, and hung on tight. Quasimodo landed lightly on a huge support that arched out from the side of the cathedral. Esmeralda was impressed. Say, you're really good at this, she said. Suddenly a towel broke loose under his foot and Quasimodo slipped. Hold on, he yelled. They slid all the way down, stopping short a few feet from the edge. Made it, Quasimodo said proudly. A dislodged stone shot out into the air and tumbled to the street. Two passing soldiers looked up. Then they shrugged their shoulders and walked on. They didn't see us, whispered Esmeralda. It's only a few feet to the ground. You can easily jump. I hope you weren't too scared, said Quasimodo. Not at all. Not for an instant, joked Esmeralda. Quasimodo smiled. I'll never forget you, Esmeralda. Esmeralda gently touched his face. Come with me. What? Quasimodo couldn't believe his ears. Right now, Esmeralda's eyes shone brightly. Leave this place. Oh, but Frollo would be so upset, said Quasimodo. No, this is where I belong. Esmeralda could see he'd made up his mind. All right then, I'll come to see you. Here? Asked Quasimodo, surprised. What about the soldiers and Frollo? I'll sneak in after sunset, Esmeralda said. She kissed him on the cheek and Quasimodo blushed bright red. Esmeralda took off her necklace. Here, she said, use this if you ever need a safe place. It will show you the way to the Court of Miracles. The thudding sound of heavy boots rounded the corner. Soldiers, whispered Quasimodo. Hurry, you got to go. He helped Esmeralda down to the ground. Then he handed Dally to her. He waited until they were out of sight. Then, smiling to himself, Quasimodo turned and began the long climb back up Notre Dame. When he reached the top, a hand reached down and pulled him onto the parapet. It was Phoebus. "I'm looking for the gypsy girl," he said. "Have you seen her?" Quasimodo was so furious he could hardly speak. He lunged for the captain. "Get out!" he shouted. He pulled a torch from the wall and began to swing it. "No soldiers! Sanctuary!" Startled, Phoebus backed down the steps. "Wait," he said. "I mean her no harm. All I want is to—" Quasimodo wouldn't listen. "Go!" He swung the torch wildly in front of her. Phoebus drew his sword and trapped the torch against the wall. "You must give her a message from me," Phoebe said. "Tell her I didn't mean to trap her here, but it was the only way I could save her life. Will you tell her that?" "I will if you go now," Quasimodo answered. "All right," said Phoebus. He turned to leave, then stopped. "One more thing," he said. "Tell Esmeralda she's very lucky. Lucky to have a friend like you." "Just go," said Quasimodo. Then he thought for a moment about what Phoebus had said. A smile lit up his face. He proudly puffed out his chest and marched into the bell tower. The gargoyles greeted him with shouts of congratulations. "Well done!" Victor proclaimed. "You ejected that tin-plated buffoon with his great panache. The nerve of him snooping around here trying to steal your girl," said Hugo. Quasimodo's mouth dropped open. "My girl? You remember, dark hair, works with the goat," Laverne reminded him. "Way to go, lover boy," exclaimed Hugo. "Lover boy," stammered Quasimodo. "Not me." "Don't be so modest," said Laverne. "Look, it's nice you want to help," Quasimodo told his friends, "but I have the ugliest face in all of Paris, remember?" He walked away. "I have to ring the bells for Vespers." From the dark, chilly tower, the bells called the people to evening prayer. As Quasimodo pulled the ropes, the past hours drifted through his head. He gazed out at the dark, flowing river. Two lovers walked hand in hand along its bank. He'd seen the same sight so many times, but he never dreamed for a moment that he could share the happiness of love. But now, as if from heaven, Esmeralda, one who didn't see his ugliness, had come into his life. Is it possible, he asked himself, that she might really care for someone like me? Quasimodo went inside and picked up a piece of wood and his knife. Deftly, he carved a little figure. It was of Esmeralda. He placed her in his miniature town, next to the model of himself, in the center of the open square. At midnight, a light was still shining in the Palace of Justice. Frollo, his gray head bowed, knelt in prayer. "Help me," he pleaded. "You know I am so much better than common people, but the gypsy woman Esmeralda is tempting me. Guilt and shame should not be mine, for I am a righteous man. Please, I beg, do not let me fall under this witch's spell." In anguish, Frollo fell silent, struggling to find an answer. Maybe it is God's will, he thought at last, for me to show her the way of righteousness. Raising his head, he swore aloud, "And if she will not be mine and mine alone, she must face the fires of damnation." There was a knock at the door. "Minister Frollo," a guard informed him, "the gypsy has escaped." "What?" Frollo didn't want to believe it. "How?" "She's nowhere in the cathedral, sir," the guard said. "She's gone." Frollo stormed around his chamber, pounding his fist into his hand. I'll find her. I'll find her if I have to burn down all of Paris. Frollo's soldiers swarmed the streets of Paris, ransacking houses and shops in their search for Esmeralda. When they didn't find her, Frollo grew incensed. He paced up and down in front of a little bakery, not far from the cathedral. "Have the man break down the door," he told Phoebus. "She's got to be around here somewhere." The soldiers stormed inside. In a few moments, they appeared with a small group of gypsies. They were hiding inside. "Sir," a soldier reported to Frollo. Frollo approached a white-haired man. 10 pieces of silver. Reward for the whereabouts of the woman. Esmeralda," he said. The old man turned away without a word. "Anyone else?" asked Frollo. "I'm sure you can't resist the money." He received no response. "Lock them up," ordered Frollo. "Sir," Phoebus inquired, "is it worth all this merely to capture the gypsy woman?" Frollo glared. "Are you questioning my judgment?" "No, Your Honor, but I am uneasy with it," Phoebus began. A soldier galloped up on horseback. "A gypsy talisman has been found on the miller's property," he informed Frollo. Frollo smiled. "Well then," he said, "we must pay the miller a little visit." The miller answered the knock on his door. His wife stood behind him, holding a baby in her arms. Another child peeked out from behind her dress. "Good day, Minister Frollo," he said. "What brings you here?" Frollo pushed him back and burst inside. "Have you been harboring gypsies?" he demanded. "My wife and I always open our door to any weary traveler," said the miller. "Have mercy, my lord. I'm placing you and your family under house arrest until I get to the bottom of this," Frollo told him. "If what you say is true and you are innocent, you have nothing to fear." "You will find that I am innocent," the miller said. Frollo left the mill and shut the door. He mounted his horse, took a flaming torch from one of his soldiers, and handed it down to Phoebus. "Burn the mill." Phoebus was shocked. "With all due respect, sir, I wasn't trained to murder the innocent, but you were trained to follow my orders," Frollo said. Phoebus looked Frollo straight in the eye. "Not the orders of a madman," he declared, extinguishing the torch in a barrel of water. "Insolent coward!" barked Frollo. "I'll do it myself." Frollo grabbed another torch from one of his men and set fire to the mill. Oh my God, really? Y'all. The flames quickly spread to the thatched roof. Phoebus leaped through a window into the smoke-filled mill. In a short time, he emerged with the children sobbing in his arms. The miller and his wife stumbled out behind him. "Captain Phoebus," Frollo cried out, "you will be punished for this insolence." He motioned to his soldiers. "Seize him!" Not far away, peering cautiously from the folds of her cloak, Esmeralda watched in horror. Hurriedly, she searched about for a stone. Then, taking careful aim, she threw it. The stone zinged toward Frollo and struck his horse squarely on the rump. The startled animal reared and Frollo was thrown to the ground. That's what you get. Before the confused soldiers could react, Phoebus leaped onto Frollo's horse and galloped toward the river. "Shoot him!" cried Frollo. "Don't let him escape!" The soldiers rolled hard after escaping captain. Just as he reached the bridge over the river, an arrow struck Phoebus in the shoulder. Losing his grip on the reins, he fell from the horse's back and into the water. Frollo trotted up and studied the river closely. All he could see was air bubbles. "Well done," he said to his men. "Now get back to town. You must find that woman, even if you have to burn every building to the ground." Jesus, he really want to find her, y'all. Concealed at the base of the bridge, Esmeralda watched them go. Then she slipped into the water. She surfaced with Phoebus in her grasp, and with strong strokes swam for shore. At nightfall, Frollo, astride his stallion, surveyed the blazing streets of Paris. A sergeant rolled up to him. "We've looked everywhere," he reported. "There's still no sign of the gypsy woman. Shall I call off the search?" For a few moments, Frollo sat still and studied Notre Dame, silhouetted against the fiery sky. He was puzzled. How in the world had she escaped from the cathedral with a guard posted at every door? As he raised his eyes to the cathedral bell tower, it suddenly came to him. Quasimodo had defied him. He'd helped that wretched witch elude her fate. As the shock of his initial anger subsided, a slight smile crossed Frollo's face. "Not just yet," the wily minister told the sergeant. "I still have one more card to play." Uh-oh. Quasimodo watched in alarm from the bell tower. "The whole city's burning down," he cried. "Quasi, pay attention," said Victor. "It's your turn." Quasimodo waved his arms toward the window. "How can you play cards at a time like this? Just look out there." "Don't worry," said Hugo. "Cathedrals are fireproof." "I'm not worried about us," said Quasimodo. "I'm worried about Esmeralda. From what I've seen, Esmeralda can take care of herself," said Laverne. Quasimodo looked out over the glowing city. "I don't know. This is really dangerous." "When things cool off," Laverne assured him, "she'll be back. You'll see." "What makes you so sure?" Quasimodo asked. "'Cause she likes you," said Laverne. "Do you think so?" asked Quasimodo, looking doubtful. "Sure," said Hugo. "You're a swell guy. One of a kind. And another thing. Wait a second." He suddenly cupped his hand to his ear. "Somebody's coming." "Quasimodo, are you there?" called a voice. "It's Esmeralda," cried Quasimodo. He ran to the door. Esmeralda's hair hung in damp strings around her face. Her soiled cloak clung to her. "What happened?" gasped Quasimodo. "Are you all right?" Esmeralda took his hand in hers. "I'm fine," she said. "I was lucky. One of the guards fell asleep and I sneaked past him. But I have to ask for your help again." "Anything," he told her. Esmeralda motioned to someone waiting on the steps. In a moment, two gypsy men carried Phoebus, unconscious, into the room. Dally trotted behind. "He was shot by one of Frollo's men," Esmeralda explained. Her eyes grew teary. "Will you keep him here?" Quasimodo nodded, and the men placed Phoebus on the bed. Phoebus's eyes fluttered open. "Esmeralda?" She put her finger lightly on his lips. "Shh. You'll hide here until you're strong enough to move." Quasimodo brought a bowl of water and a clean rag. Fortune must have been with you, Phoebus," Esmeralda said, cleaning his wound. That arrow almost pierced your heart." Phoebus smiled weakly and kissed her hand. "I'm not so sure it didn't." Esmeralda leaned over and kissed him back. Quasimodo felt his own heart break. Stifling a sob, he turned away. Oh, Quasi. Suddenly, Dally bleated in alarm. Quasimodo rushed to the window. "Frollo's coming," he said. "Hurry, go down the south tower steps." "Be careful, my brave friend," Esmeralda told Quasimodo. "Promise me you won't let anything happen to him." Quasimodo nodded. "I promise." She patted his cheek. "Thank you." Then she was gone. As fast as he was able, Quasimodo lifted Phoebus from the bed, hid him under a table, and covered him with the tablecloth. Moments later, Frollo entered the bell tower. He was carrying a little covered basket. "Master," said Quasimodo, trying to keep his voice steady, "I didn't think you would be coming." Frollo sat himself at the table and looked expectantly at Quasimodo. "Well?" he asked. "Oh, sorry," said Quasimodo. He scurried about and set the table. "Grapes for you, dear boy," Frollo said at last, opening the basket. "I'm never too busy to share a meal with you." A grape rolled across the table and tumbled onto the floor. Quasimodo sprang from his seat and picked it up. He blinked hard. Phoebus's hand was sticking out from under the cloth. Quickly he pushed it back. "You seem a bit nervous," said Frollo. "Is something troubling you? Are you hiding something from me?" "Me? Oh no, master." Quasimodo sat back at the table. "You're not eating," said Frollo. Quasimodo stuffed a handful of grapes into his mouth. These are very good," he said. Phoebus let out a little moan. Repeated Quasimodo. "Very good indeed." Frollo rose from the table. "What's different in here?" he asked, looking around the bell tower. "Nothing, sir," answered Quasimodo, almost frozen with fright. Frollo glanced at the miniature town. Then he picked up the figure of a woman. "Isn't this one new?" he asked. "It looks very much like the gypsy girl." He put his face very close to Quasimodo's. "I know," he said. "I know you helped her escape." Quasimodo gulped and cowered, fearing the blows his master had dealt him so many times before. "And now all of Paris is burning." Frollo's face trembled with rage. "All because of you." "Shh, shh, she was kind to me, master," said Quasimodo. "You idiot." With a sweep of his arm, Frollo knocked the little town onto the floor. "The woman is a witch. She has you under a spell. Gypsies aren't capable of real love. Think of your own mother." Then Frollo became strangely calm and put his arm around Quasimodo's shoulder. "Well, I will soon free you from Esmeralda's evil spell," he said. "What do you mean?" asked Quasimodo. Frollo spoke distinctly and slowly. "Listen carefully to me," he said. "I've discovered where her hideout is. Tomorrow at dawn, I will attack with 1,000 men." Snatching up the figure of Esmeralda, Frollo took his knife and plunged it into the little wooden model. Then he set it on fire, tossed it to the floor, and left the room. As Quasimodo stared at the charred figurine, Phoebus crawled out from under the table and groggily struggled to his feet. "We must find the Court of Miracles before dawn," Phoebus said. "We've got to warn them." He stopped at the door. "Are you coming with me?" Quasimodo shook his head. "I can't." Phoebus raised his eyebrows in surprise. "I thought you were Esmeralda's friend." "Frollo's my master," said Quasimodo. "I can't disobey him again." "Esmeralda stood up for you," Phoebus told him. "You've got a funny way of showing gratitude." "Well, I'm not going to sit back and watch Frollo massacre innocent people." Holding his wounded shoulder, he staggered from the room. Quasimodo stood quietly. He took Esmeralda's necklace from inside his shirt. Frollo was right. Esmeralda didn't love him. After all, she loved Phoebus. Why should he help her? And how could he take another chance on a world where people had treated him so cruelly? Still, Esmeralda had rescued him at the festival, while Frollo did nothing. But Frollo was his master. Yet, Esmeralda, at a time when she hardly knew him, had risked her own safety for his. Quasimodo rushed to join Phoebus. "I know that's right, Quasimodo. She did all that to help you. Nobody else helped you." Phoebus cautiously opened one of the side doors. He peeked out and breathed a sigh of relief. Not a soldier in sight. If he could make it across the square unseen, he'd be on his way. Quasimodo out of nowhere appeared, hanging upside down from a ledge. He somersaulted and landed in front of Phoebus. "Good grief, man!" Phoebus cried out. "You startled me." "Shh," whispered Quasimodo. "I'm coming with you." "Glad you changed your mind," said Phoebus. "I'm happy you changed your mind too, Quasi." "I'm doing it for her, not for you," Quasimodo told him. He showed Phoebus Esmeralda's necklace. "She said this will help us find her." Phoebus studied it. "It's got some sort of charm or talisman hanging from it. Must be some sort of code." "I think it's a map," said Quasimodo. "You see?" He pointed with his finger. "The cross represents the cathedral and the lines are the streets of the city." "A map?" scoffed Phoebus. "I've been in battles on 4 continents, and I think I've got a pretty good idea what a map looks like. And this is not it." "Well," said Quasimodo, "I've lived up in the bell tower for 20 years, and I think I know what this city looks like from above, and this is it." "Fine," said Phoebus at last. "If you say it's a map, it's a map. But look, if we're going to help Esmeralda, we better call a truce." "All right," agreed Quasimodo. He pointed to the talisman again. "Look at this pointed symbol. It's placed inside the city graveyard. I'll bet that's the Court of Miracles." "I know just where it is," Quasimodo told him. "I've seen it from the bell tower." As soon as they crossed the square and disappeared into a side alley, a figure stepped out of the shadow of Notre Dame. It was Frollo. He'd been listening to every word, keeping a safe distance behind Quasimodo and Phoebus. "Aw, man, y'all done told this man the location of the gypsies. Here we go, y'all. Let's see what happens." Frollo led his troops through the moonlit city. At the edge of the town, he saw them go up to the cemetery gate. As Quasimodo pushed open the heavy iron gate, its rusted hinges creaked. He helped a steady Phoebus who was weak from the long walk. Cautiously, they entered the quiet graveyard. The headstones, standing like ghostly sentinels, gleamed in the moonlight. An owl, disturbed by the man's approach, swooped past on silent wings. Startled, Quasimodo and Phoebus ducked. Then cautiously they began to search the graveyard. Look at his master over here standing and paying attention. He listening to everything they saying. Several minutes later, Quasimodo nudged Phoebus. A large pointed tomb loomed before them. "This looks like the symbol on the map," exclaimed Phoebus. Quasimodo fingered the cold marble surface and felt a deep groove. He traced his outline. "Phoebus!" he cried, removing the cover. Right inside the entry, a torch flickered in an iron holder. It lit the way down a flight of steps. It leads underground," breathed Phoebus. "I'm glad you decided to come along, Quasimodo. A little trip through the dark, rat-infested catacombs is always more fun when you bring a friend." "I know it is." At the bottom of the steps, a torchlit room opened up before them. The room was lined with skeletons sitting propped against the walls. Okay, y'all, now y'all leading this man right to these people. "This doesn't seem right to me," Phoebus said. We should have run into something by now. A guard, a booby trap, or..." All of a sudden, some of the skeletons leaning against the wall sprang to their feet. In the blink of an eye, Phoebus and Quasimodo were surrounded. "They're not skeletons at all," said Quasimodo in shock. "They're men wearing disguises." One man stepped forward. Quasimodo recognized him at once. It was Clopin, the man he'd seen at the festival. Well. The head of the gypsies began. What have we here? Trespassers! Spies! Interrupted two of his men. We're not spies. Listen to us, Phoebus protested. You've got to listen. Clopin turned to his men. Bind and gag them. From all sides, the angry men closed in. They bound Quasimodo and Phoebus and carried them into a large chamber. Clopin gestured to the room. So now you have seen the Court of Miracles. How very clever to have found our hideaway. Unfortunately, you won't live to tell the tale. He held up a noose and shook it in Phoebus' face. We're going to have a little party, and guess who's going to hang around for it? Stop! Esmeralda ran into the court and pushed her way toward Clopin. These men are our friends, she told them. Clopin was amazed. They are? This soldier saved the miller's family, explained Esmeralda, and Quasimodo helped me escape from the cathedral. Phoebus faced the crowd. We came to warn you. Frollo's coming. He told me he knows where you are hiding, added Quasimodo, and he's attacking at dawn with 1,000 men. The crowd stirred in fear. We can't waste any time, Esmeralda said to her people. If Frollo attacks at dawn, we must leave by midnight. She turned to Phoebus. You took a terrible risk coming here. It may not exactly show, but we're very grateful. Don't thank me, said Phoebus. Thank Quasimodo. He's the real hero. Esmeralda hugged Quasimodo. I think I know that better than anyone. Without this man's help, said Phoebus, addressing the gypsies, I never would have found my way here. Nor would I, boomed the voice. Frollo stood triumphant at the entrance. His soldiers blocked all means of escape. The minister of justice strolled to the center of the room. After 20 years of searching, the Court of Miracles is mine at last. As the proverb goes, good things come to those who wait. Listen and follow. He smiled at Quasimodo and ruffled his hair. Dear boy, I always knew one day you'd be of use to me, he said. You led me right here. Quasimodo's eyes grew wide. Oh no! He buried his face in his hands. Esmeralda flew to Quasimodo's defense. You tricked him, she told Frollo. Frollo ignored her. And look what else I've caught in my net. It's Captain Phoebus, back from his watery grave. He poked Phoebus on his injured shoulder. I shall remedy that. And as for you, Frollo said, sneering at Esmeralda, you are guilty of the crime of witchcraft. You, too, shall pay with your life. Frollo motioned to his sergeant. Lock them up. Then he addressed the gypsies. There will be a little bonfire in the square tomorrow. You're all invited to attend. Quasimodo clutched at Frollo's cape. No, please. Frollo brushed him away. Take this one back to the bell tower and make certain he can't escape. The soldiers took the prisoners away, and Quasimodo, overcome with grief, collapsed on the floor. The next day at sunset, a crowd gathered in the square. Caged prison carts carrying the gypsies and Phoebus rolled to the foot of Notre Dame. In the center of the square, Esmeralda stood tied to a wooden post atop a pile of wood and straw. Frollo climbed a high platform in the center of the square. The prisoner, Esmeralda, he announced, has been found guilty of the crime of witchcraft. The sentence, he boomed, is death. Powerless to help, the archdemon looked on sadly from the cathedral door. Frollo's men had surrounded him. The crowd pushed forward toward the platform. Release her, cried a townswoman. She's done nothing wrong. Frollo sneered at the angry crowd. He snapped his fingers, and a soldier advanced with a flaming torch. Taking it, Frollo crossed the square to Esmeralda. "The time has come, gypsy," he said. "You stand on the brink of the abyss. Yet even now, it is not too late. I can save you from the flames of this world and the next. Choose me or the fire." Esmeralda said nothing. Frollo began to tremble. Esmeralda's defiant silence spoke more than 1,000 words. Enraged, he faced the crowd. "The evil witch has made her decision. She has put the soul of every citizen of Paris in mortal danger." In the bell tower, a chained Quasimodo knelt between two columns of stone. His head hung down as he stared hopelessly at the floor. "Come on, Quasi, snap out of it," pleaded Hugo. "You gotta break these chains. You can do it. You're the strongest guy in town." "It's all my fault," mumbled Quasimodo despondently. "You cannot let Frollo win," Victor insisted. "He already has," Quasimodo said, sighing. "So that's it?" asked Hugo. "You're giving up." "You know," Laverne told Quasimodo, "these chains aren't what's holding you back. I think you're still jealous." "Leave me alone," Quasimodo snapped at them. "Okay, Quasimodo," said Hugo. His voice broke. "We'll leave you alone." "After all," Victor added, deeply hurt, "we're only made of stone." Laverne sadly shook her head. "We just thought you were made of something stronger." The gargoyles turned to stone. "Oh, wow." Quasimodo listened as Frollo's booming voice addressed the crowd below. "She stands before you," Frollo shouted, "exposed for the monster that she is. Therefore, it is my sacred duty to see that she no longer lives on earth. As fitting punishment for her being a witch, the gypsy Esmeralda will be burned at the stake." The crowd roared as one. "No! No!" Quasimodo roared back. He strained against the heavy chains they held fast. Using every bit of his strength, he pulled again. Little cracks zigzagged down the columns. As Quasimodo struggled, a column toppled over and shook the bell tower. The bells of Notre Dame swayed and began to toll. In a few minutes, he managed to tug the chains loose. Freed, Quasimodo grabbed a long rope and tore to the edge of the parapet. Tying one end of the rope around a pillar, he flung his leg overside and lowered himself from ledge to ledge. Meanwhile, Frollo tossed a torch onto the dry straw and stood back as it caught fire. Overcoming by the heat of the flames and the stifling smoke, Esmeralda fell unconsciously. "Get up, Esmeralda!" Suddenly, before the astonished crowd, Quasimodo swung into the square. He beat back some soldiers caught off guard. Then he shoved Frollo aside, untied Esmeralda, and swept her away. "Quasimodo!" everyone shouted, cheering him on. A few moments later, Quasimodo reappeared on the cathedral balcony, holding Esmeralda in his arms. He cried, "Sanctuary! Sanctuary! Sanctuary! Sanctuary!" The crowd returned his cry, "Sanctuary!" Quasimodo disappeared into the cathedral with Esmeralda. Gently, he placed her, still unconscious, onto a pallet in his workroom. Down below, a livid Frollo fumed. "Seize the cathedral!" he screamed to his men. Quasimodo climbed into a parapet with a wooden beam in his arms. He raised it above his head and heaved it to the street below, where it crashed into Frollo's carriage, sending splinters and chunks of wood everywhere. Several soldiers fled. "Come back, you cowards!" shouted Frollo. A line of soldiers hoisted the heavy beam to their soldiers. Then, running with it, they rammed it against the cathedral door. Taking advantage of the confusion, Phoebus freed himself and Clopin. He leaped atop the prison cart and shouted to the crowd, "Citizens of Paris, Frollo has persecuted our people, ransacked our cities, and now he has declared war on Notre Dame herself. Will we allow it? Will they allow it? Let's see." No! That's what they say, y'all. Phoebus and Clopin freed the caged gypsies. Wresting a sword from one of the soldiers, Phoebus forged a path to the cathedral, but Frollo's army continued its assault on it. Swarming like bees, the soldiers climbed the walls, and below in the square they battered the doors. Quasimodo was exhausted. "It's hopeless," he said, looking down from the bell tower. "I can't fight them all off." He covered his ears to keep out the clanging of the bells. "Listen," said Victor. "I detect a sour note. One of the bells may have a crack in it." "That's it," said Quasimodo. He jumped to his feet. "What's it?" Hugo asked, chasing after him. "If a bell has a crack, it's repaired and melted lead, right?" asked Quasimodo. "Right," said Hugo. "Very hot stuff." "Well," Quasimodo said, "some of that very hot stuff is heating up in the vat room." "Ah," said Hugo, Laverne, and Victor. "Let's get going." The vat, filled with hot melted lead, stood in the corner of the room. Using all their might, the gargoyles struggled to tip it over. "This is one time," panted Hugo, "when it's good to have hands of stone." "Right?" joked Laverne. "They really come in handy." At last, with Quasimodo pushing the beam hard against the vat, they tipped it over. The glowing liquid flowed toward everyone. Look at that, y'all. All of it. I just want to get y'all a more up close and personal picture. You see all that? Look at all that. Just going crazy. Okay. Going crazy. All right. Let's start off from where, because they just cut off the sentence, y'all. Okay, it says the glowing liquid flowed toward the balcony and cascaded down to the street. Below in the square, Frollo frantically sprinted back and forth, shouting orders. "Batter down the doors!" The huge doors stood firm. "Again!" roared Frollo. Without warning, a shower of red-hot lead rained down from the sky. At once, the shouting soldiers dropped the beam and fled. The men scaling the wall scrambled down as fast as they could. "Cowards!" yelled Frollo. He waited for a break in the fiery cascade. Then he rushed forward and inspected the door. Several breaks had opened in the wood. He pried open a small gap with his sword and just managed to squeeze through. Quasimodo leaned out and looked at the deserted square. "We've done it!" he cried. "We've beaten them back!" He tore into his room. "Come and see! Esmeralda, wake up!" he said, rubbing her hand. It fell back limp on the bed. "Oh no!" gasped Quasimodo. Then, from the corner of his eye, he caught a moving shadow. It was Frollo, holding a raised dagger. Quasimodo jumped to his feet. Effortlessly, he wrenched the dagger away and threw it aside. Frollo, thrown off balance, fell to the floor. Now, listen to me," he said. "No, Frollo, you listen," Quasimodo told him. "Okay, Quasi. All my life, you said the world's a cruel place. But now I see that the only thing dark and cruel about it is you." Esmeralda stirred. "Quasimodo?" she asked. He picked Esmeralda up in his arms and ran from the room. Frollo scrambled to his feet and charged after them. Quasimodo made his way out along the parapet. He reached for a ledge and hoisted himself onto it, then grabbed hold of Esmeralda and helped her up. Inching along the narrow ledge, they managed to turn the corner. "Leaving so soon?" asked Frollo, standing before them with his sword drawn. "You've been a thorn in my side long enough, Quasimodo," said Frollo, "and now I'm going to do what I should have done 20 years ago." He leaped onto a gargoyle that jutted over the square in a roll of black velvet. He whipped off his cape and flung it at Quasimodo. Caught by surprise, Quasimodo lost his footing. As he slipped from the ledge, Esmeralda grabbed his hand. As Quasimodo hung in midair, Frollo laughed in triumph and swung his sword high. Esmeralda screamed. She was losing her grip on Quasimodo. At any moment he would fall. But then Frollo heard the crack of stone. The gargoyle was breaking beneath him. As it snapped free, Frollo, screaming, plunged to the square far below. Esmeralda couldn't hold on to Quasimodo's wrist any longer. Slowly, he slipped from her fingers. "Quasimodo, no!" she cried out. But at that moment, he fell. Two strong arms suddenly reached. But at that moment he fell. Two strong arms suddenly reached out from a window just below and pulled him inside to safety. "Ooh, look at there!" Esmeralda looked down and saw Phoebus smiling back. Phoebus laughed. "Nothing like being at the right place at the right time," he said, patting Quasimodo on the shoulder. "I looked out and there were your legs dangling in the air." Then his voice grew soft. "I thank the Almighty I hadn't come a moment later." In relief, the two friends embraced. Look at that. Esmeralda burst into the room and threw her arms around Quasimodo. He smiled at her and at Phoebus. Then he took each of them by the wrist and joined their hands together. Outside, a crowd had gathered in front of the cathedral. As soon as Phoebus and Esmeralda appeared in the doorway, they were greeted with smiles and cheers from the grateful townspeople. Quasimodo hung back, smiling encouragingly. Esmeralda held out her hand to him. Blinking in the dawn's pale light, he hesitantly stepped outside. Then a little girl came forward and tugged at his sleeve. Quasimodo bent down and she gently touched his face. Taking his hand, she led him down the steps and into the crowd. Oh, so nice. "Quasimodo! Quasimodo! Quasimodo!" everybody shouted. Clopin and some townsmen lifted him high on their shoulders and paraded around the square. And that morning, the city walls echoed with joyous cheers for Quasimodo, the hero of Notre Dame. All right, Quasi, you ain't in that bell tower no more. That's the end of the story, you guys. I know it was 2 parts, but I love the story. It was very good. I hope you all liked it too. Again, that is Notre Dame. This is part 2. Thank you all for tuning in to Big Mama Story Time. Don't forget to like, share, comment, subscribe to my page. Thank you all for your support and continue to watch my videos. Thank you all. Bye.